Well. Clemson Tiger fans, college football fans, welcome back to another episode of the All In Show here on the Clemson Football Voice of College Football YouTube channel. I'm your host, Jordan Bowman. I will be joined by my co-host, Tiger Paul Craven. He's joining us for the second week in a row from the softball field. This will not be the norm. We're going to be making a schedule change that will be announced sometime in the following days after this stream. We're going to try to keep it, relatively. It might stay today. It might be on Friday. We'll continue to workshop that, and we'll post in the community tab to keep you guys updated. But we're still here, not going anywhere. And we are very grateful that you are able to join us tonight. If you haven't already, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you're new, because we obviously are creeping up and getting really, really close to 4,000 subscribers. So I would really greatly appreciate it if you shared the video with friends, whether they're Clemson Tiger fans or just college football fans in general that just need their fix in this off season, because we know how that can kind of drag on. And I know I can only speak for myself, but I know that Tiger Paul Craven feels the same way. Like, these shows and college football YouTube have gotten us through these off seasons just countless times, and I'm very grateful that we get to be that outlet now. So we got a loaded show for you tonight, and I don't want to waste any more time. We started a little bit late, so I want to just kind of dive on in. And of course, I am, as always, joined by my co-host Tiger Paul Craven, live from the softball fields. What's going on, my man?
Hey, what's up, everybody? What's up, Jordan? What's up, everybody in the comment section? Second week in a row, like you said, Jordan, tuning in from the softball field. Again, like Jordan said, this will not be the norm. We're going to make a change here that's going to work a little bit better with my schedule. Unfortunately, just softball strikes again, and we gotta kind of pivot. But not to worry, the show's not going to go anywhere. Thankful Jordan's working with me and being flexible, and we're going to figure something out that's going to work for both of us and then work for all of you as well, man. Excited to be here on the show again with everybody. Hit that like button if you haven't already hit it. Check out all the links in the comment in the description of this video, the Amazon link, and all of that stuff down there. That's a good way to support the channel. Don't forget about the super chat feature. You guys know that we always turn the show over to you guys towards the end of the show and let you guys kind of drive the show, ask us questions, and kind of get our thoughts on anything college football related or anything in general, for that matter. So get your comments in now. And if you want to be sure to get it read and you want to support what me and Jordan do here on the All In Show, hit that super chat feature for us. Be greatly appreciated. But if you cannot do that, completely understand. This economy's crazy. And cash is hard to come by, especially extra of it in these times we live in. So just simply hit that like button for us. And if you like what we do here, hit that subscribe button and think about hanging out with us long term. You don't have to be a Clemson fan. You're just a little bit of a better person if you are a Clemson fan. That's it. No big deal. I'm just kidding. We welcome all fan bases. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you guys were in here last week, you saw SEC Dog in here just riling up our entire comment section and going back and forth with us. It was a good time, all in good fun. I love it. It's part of the reason college football is so great. And like you said, Jordan, man, this channel and this show really does make the off season far more bearable than it was before me and you were doing this. I can tell you that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It really does. Yeah, but without further ado, well, you know what? First of all, before we actually dive on in, want to give a shout out to the Clemson baseball team. Obviously, suffering a tough defeat in the regionals this past weekend. That was,
man.
The super regionals, I should say.
Yeah.
Two really great baseball games, and neither of them went Clemson's way. I have a lot of thoughts about how that game played out, but I'm just really it was a really fun season. Made me feel kind of hopeful for that program again because it had been a while, and obviously the regional curse breaking that this season and winning 40 plus games for the second year in a row, a national seed for the top 8 national seed for the second year in a row. I mean, just by all accounts, this was a successful year. So that was something to be happy about in the sort of wake of a really two really heartbreaking losses. But
yeah, absolutely. Look, man, year 2 of Eric Bakich, and it's refreshing that we made a super regional, right? First time since 2010. That's a long time. That was a drought that was getting really old, and I think he will forever be a legend just by the way he celebrated that regional win. I think that went a long way for Clemson fans and exciting them. And the sky's the limit for this baseball team. They're trending in the right direction. They got some work to do, obviously, in the transfer portal. They gotta fix the pitching situation. Wasn't the greatest pitching situation this year. The bats had to bail them out far too many times. The bullpen kind of got away from us a lot, but it was an encouraging season, and it shows the trajectory that the baseball team appears to be on right now. Appears to be that Clemson went out, they made the right hire, and we just got to give them time and continue to see the growth. Maybe next year, maybe we get to Omaha.
Hey, man, I know this fan base deserves it. And you feel upset because you felt like you had a really good shot this year, and obviously those 2 games were both very winnable and just didn't go your way. Shout out to Cam Cannarella for making 2 of the clutchest plays I've ever seen in any level of baseball.
This man knocks a 3-run homer to tie it up, and then makes a game-winning over his head crazy outfit. I mean, it was
I've
just
never
like,
seen anything like that.
What can this dude not do, man? Like, oh, and by the way, he needs surgery in the offseason to fix his shoulder. So doing all that with a bum shoulder that needs to be surgically repaired. So shout out to him. Shout out to the rest of the baseball team. Looks like we're going to lose a couple guys to the MLB draft. Lost a couple already to the transfer portal, but I think we'll be okay. Eric Bakich will scour the transfer portal. He'll bring in the guys that we need to, and recruiting is going to be good as well. So I think we're in a good spot.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And the sky's the limit. We know what this program can be when it's good. But yeah, we won't waste any more time. We wanted to really talk about a lot has happened as far as Clemson recruiting in the past week. Not so much like commits or anything like that, but sort of the future of the quarterback position is starting to take shape. Um, Clemson made two quarterback offers this past week at Dabo Swinney's camp. They threw for Garrett Riley and Dabo, and well, actually, a group of quarterbacks threw for Garrett Riley and Dabo, and two wound up with offers. Those two going by the name of Tait Reynolds and Brady Hart.
Yep.
This is really interesting for a lot of reasons. Just these two particular names and the timing at which both of them were offered, because they were offered basically simultaneously. I believe Tait Reynolds was offered first, and then
Yep.
Brady Hart. But Brady Hart was the first to announce, so it was kind of a
Right.
interesting little sort of dynamic there. Um, but I want to start with Tait Reynolds. He was the first quarterback offered from the state of Arizona, Queen Creek. Um, has not been playing the quarterback position very long. He threw for, I believe, 1,800 yards, 11 touchdowns, 11 picks. That doesn't sound the number when you look at the numbers. That it doesn't sound all that great.
Yeah.
And so I can understand there's some concern there. But he has an extremely live arm, really great athlete. He kind of has a lot of the tools that Garrett Riley is looking for in a quarterback. So, I think this is an offer that is one that could potentially be one of those where we look back and we're like, okay, we didn't think much of it then, but it turns out he's actually pretty good. He plays baseball as well. He's a top 100 baseball prospect, currently committed to Arizona State. But it's very clear that his recruitment's open, so that's not really going to affect anything. He does want to play baseball in college.
Right.
So a lot of this, a lot of the timeline for how this is going to play out is, whether, when he can actually talk to Clemson baseball coaches, Eric Backich and all of them, because I don't think they can start communicating with recruits until August.
Yep.
Yep. And so this one is kind of, this offer is kind of a telling about kind of where Clemson sees their quarterback position and what Garrett Riley himself is looking for as far as the future of the offense. It's clear they're kind of they really like what Clemson has done in previous cycles has been kind of they've targeted a lot of the higher profile guys, and it seems like now this is more of an evaluation. We're going to find our guy early on. Does he have the traits? Does he fit the mold of what we're looking for this offense? And we're going to offer and try to get him on board as soon as possible.
Yeah.
So Tait is he's gotten interest from all over. So it's not like Clemson is like just a lone wolf here. But I do like where Clemson stands right now a lot as far as their chances of getting him. So of course he's going to go through his process, but this is an offer that I think will could eventually lead into a commitment, and obviously that depends on kind of how this timeline plays out with the other quarterback that they offered by the name of Brady Hart from the state of Florida. Coco, oh man, what is it? Coco? I had it up. I always forget the name. But regardless, from the state of Florida, when you look at the numbers, they jump out to you a lot more. I believe he threw for nearly 4,000 yards, 38 touchdowns. Really accurate. When you put on his tape, I mean, it really does. He just plays with a lot of poise. He doesn't have the physical attributes that Tait Reynolds does, but the ball placement, the poise. He has a really nice release. It's a little bit. I mean, I think he gets the ball out pretty quickly. I saw someone. I think when you look at the 24/7 Sports, sort of scouting report for him, it says that he has an elongated release and that it's kind of slow. But then when you watch, I don't really see it, and I feel like he'd be able to get the ball out pretty quickly at the next level. So I really think that Brady Hart is another great potential option, and I think Clemson is in really good standing with him as well. Um, so I think it really just depends on how both of these guys sort of play out their they both want to look at their options, evaluate their options, and see where what's actually out there. But I really like where Clemson stands, and I'm sure you've probably seen the crystal ball predictions that in for Brady Hart.
Yeah.
And but he wants to make sure that he covers all his bases and make sure he makes the right decision. So um, I'm really, really intrigued with how this timeline is going to play out, because it very well, there's a lot of fluidity here that could be the difference in whether Tait Reynolds ends up being the quarterback for this
Right.
26 class, or Brady Hart,
Mm-hmm.
because they're not taking two. I know
Nope.
that's kind of something that I wouldn't be opposed to, but clearly the staff is not that's not the idea here. They like both of them, and they said, hey, listen, we've got one spot available. So first come, first serve. Whoever's
Yep.
ready to go, that's who we're rocking with. Um, and so it could be the difference of Brady Hart maybe extending his recruitment out a little bit more, and Tait Reynolds getting to meet with Eric Bakich, and they hit it off, and Tait Reynolds ends up committing to Clemson, or maybe Tait Reynolds drags his recruitment out, and Brady Hart, he goes on his visits that he's going on throughout the summer, and he decides, all right, I think I know where my heart is, and he decides to commit. So what were your kind of thoughts when have you gotten to watch either of their tape, and what are your kind of thoughts of them as prospects? Do you have a preference? I think I have a preference, a slight preference
Yeah.
on who I would rather Clemson take. Do you have any sort of thoughts on that?
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. So it's going to be interesting how it plays out with both of these guys, right? One, it's a first come first serve basis, just like you outlined, Jordan. This is not a thing where Clemson's going to take two quarterbacks. They're looking for one quarterback. So the first of these two that commits, that other offer doesn't mean anything anymore, right? So that's first and foremost. The other thing that I find interesting with these two guys is obviously with Tait Reynolds, baseball is going to be a factor, right? They can't even talk to the baseball staff, Eric Bakich, and the rest of the baseball staff until August. The Clemson baseball staff is going to play a part in this because, as you mentioned, Tait Reynolds wants to play baseball in college along with playing football. Now, that gives me kind of pause for concern um, when it comes to specifically a quarterback position, right? Because so much goes into being a quarterback, especially at the level in which Clemson plays and competes in college football, that I don't know if you can split the time between baseball and football and really give it all you got. I don't know, as a starting quarterback for a major college football program, I don't know if you can really do both. And that's just a personal opinion of mine. I do like Tait Reynolds. I do like the fact that he's a big guy. He's athletic. He's got a big arm. A little bit still raw, but he's got several more years to develop. Right. He's got 2 more years in high school to develop, so I don't really think that's a big deal. But it does give me a little bit of pause for concern that he wants to play baseball in college,
Yeah,
simply because of the position that he plays. Quarterback is just one of those positions that I feel like you got to kind of be all in on, man. There's so much on your shoulders. There's so much that you're digesting and doing, and things that you need to do not only during the season but in the off season when he would be playing baseball, right? There are things that he should be doing to improve as a college quarterback, right, for Clemson. So that gives me a little bit of pause for concern. He does appear his skill set appears to be a little more friendly to the Garrett Riley system that he would be playing in, more so than Brady Hart. But Brady Hart's a guy that, I mean, you obviously listed off his numbers: 38 touchdowns, over 4,000 yards. I mean, the guy can absolutely ball. So I really wouldn't mind either one of these guys. I think the biggest thing for me is kind of that baseball piece and it being a quarterback. When it was a little bit different with the Will Taylor situation, right? He was a receiver, right? So I think there's a little bit more play within that position to dedicate so you can go play baseball for a little bit. I just don't know if that works at the quarterback position at this level. I could be proven wrong. Who knows? Tait Reynolds may commit to Clemson and become the next great quarterback in a long lineage of really good quarterbacks at Clemson. I just don't know if it works as far as the baseball piece. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that kind of sums up my concerns as well. Like I think Tait Reynolds is a guy that I think the upside is absolutely there because he's just natural God-given talent as far as an athlete. He's very physically, like he looks like a quarterback.
Yeah.
But he has a lot of developing to do. Like I said, last season was his first season at playing quarterback.
Right.
And what 11 touchdowns, 11 picks, that obviously doesn't scream out, it's not really exciting as far as the numbers are concerned. Now, one thing I did find out was that 5 of the picks he threw that season were in one game, and I believe that was his first game. So if
tough way to start your career.
Yeah, it's a tough way to start your career, but I guess he finished the season a lot better. So I do want to see what he looks like as a junior and what his progression from year 1 starting to year 2 is. Because if he does make a significant leap, obviously there's a lot more intriguing there. But I mean, you hit on it, the baseball aspect. It's not something that obviously Clemson has not been opposed to their players playing baseball. You think of Will Taylor and Kyle Parker, DJ Reader, even at a time. And so, like, Clemson has a history of being receptive to that. But when you think about, especially the recent example of Will Taylor, he came in as a quarterback, switched to wide receiver, and then obviously just, at a certain point, he was like, okay, I got to focus on one thing or the other. And he stuck with baseball, obviously, because his professional prospects were definitely in baseball and not football.
Yeah, I mean, good choice for him, right? He's about to be drafted in the Major League Baseball draft, so he's doing just fine. He made the right choice.
Yeah, I mean, he was a very highly sought after baseball recruit, and just decided to stay in school, and play football as well. But it's just, especially with what Clemson needs their quarterback to be in this day and age, it's a lot different than when Kyle Parker was the starting quarterback. It takes a lot to be, to play two sports, any two sports. I mean, we've had, DeAndre Hopkins. He played football and basketball as a freshman. Obviously, that didn't last long. I believe he played like the last 6 or 7 games of his freshman year for the basketball team, but he had to focus on football, and obviously that worked out for him very well. He's a multi-time Pro Bowler, future Hall of Famer.
Yeah, future Hall of Famer. Yeah, absolutely.
So, like, if you're recruiting Tait Reynolds to eventually be a starting quarterback for you, that you need to play games for you. I don't know whether the baseball aspect will be something he'll be able to consistently to stick with. Maybe he comes in as if he commits and signs, and he comes in as a freshman and plays, football and baseball in a year where he doesn't have to start. Maybe that does happen. But I think long term, will he be able to commit to both? We don't have many. We don't have really any examples of that.
Right, we don't.
Recent
and
examples.
the other thing that kind of concerns me with it is you mentioned, and it's very true, right? His raw talent, like his just athletic, gifted ability that he was gifted from God, right? Like, but he's going to need development. You mentioned he's only been playing quarterback for a year. This dude is about as raw of a prospect as you can get at the quarterback
Mhm.
position. And now you're talking about coming in, probably still needing development if he's the one that ends up committing and taking the offer, probably still needing some development, right? Probably not step on campus day one starter type dude, right? Unless something crazy happens within the next 2 years, right? And that very well could happen. That's not out of the realm of possibility, but he's probably going to still need some more development when he gets on campus. And now you're talking about splitting time with baseball, right?
Yep.
I just don't feel great about that. I really don't. I don't feel great about it. Um, I mean, if it was my decision, I'd lean more, obviously Brady Hart, because of that situation. But obviously the ceiling is probably higher with Tait Reynolds.
Yeah, I'm with you, and to hit on Brady Hart, like I do really like you watch his tape. It's really impressive. I think his
Yeah,
understanding of it, I mean he makes his reads. You go through the highlight. There's one in particular where he hits this cover two hole shot, like, and the
yeah,
safety is like literally like if he throws the ball like a split second later, it's an interception. But he fits
right.
it right between the corner and the safety, and it was just like he saw it all the way through. And he's a very instinctive passer, very natural understanding of the quarterback position. He has really good
Right.
feel. When they talked about him, when he was interviewed, I believe by Tiger Illustrated, I want to credit them properly. So I believe it was Tiger Illustrated. When they asked about who he compared himself to, he compared himself to Trevor Lawrence. And when you watch him, not from a physical, tools and arm talent
Yeah.
standpoint, but when you
Yeah.
watch his the way he moves and in the pocket and his feel for the pocket and how he delivers the ball, I see some Trevor Lawrence, and just kind of it's a very smooth, compact, just just not even really worried about what's going on around him. He's very much dialed into what's going on down the field, and it's just everything is one fluid motion. That's kind of what it looks like. So I think Brady Hart would be a fantastic addition if he ends up being the guy,
Oh yeah.
um,
Yeah.
as well. And so I think Clemson has two really good options. It's just one, there's obviously some concerns, probably more concerns from one than the other, from
Yeah.
a experience and uh, experience standpoint, and obviously the baseball aspect. So I'm really interested to see kind of how all of this plays out, and we'll definitely have updates on as these guys take visits and get more um, deeper into their sort of process, where we'll kind of have a better idea of what their timeline is looking like. Um,
Yeah.
but I wanted to
Absolutely.
talk about it because you can, it's really easy to kind of ignore 2026 and because we're still thinking about what's going on in the 2025 class, but it's the coaches can't afford to be that way, and they're already
Exactly.
laying the groundwork. We talked about what Matt Luke has been doing as far as laying the groundwork for the future classes,
Yeah.
um, and some of the offers that went out. And so it's a recruiting it is a
Never
six
stops, man.
it never stops, and for any given class, like, you're laying the groundwork for that class, you know
While
two,
still like while still knee
three.
deep in recruiting for the class you're about to sign.
Right,
Like,
and like, and for any is this like you start for some kids, you lay the groundwork when they're like camp, like when they're like little, like middle school, and you had to come into camps and stuff,
yeah.
like you build
Yeah.
those relationships. It's a really it, it's a very, very arduous process for any class, and you only think about it as from a fan perspective. You only think about it in the immediate. It's like, okay, this class is coming in a year out from now, but the
Right.
coaches have been, they've been, communicating with these kids in a lot of cases for years
Right.
before they're even ready to, become college athletes. So um, that's kind of the reality of what college football recruiting is. And so we did want to talk about it because it's very important, especially since, um, beyond Blake Hebert, and obviously you didn't take a quarterback in the 2024 cycle. There's a lot of questions about what the future of the quarterback position looks like for Clemson. So we did want to hit on that. You have any other final thoughts on that before we move on?
No, I mean, obviously there's a long way to go in both of these recruitments. Nothing, no decisions are going to be made anytime soon. I know the crystal ball came out for Brady Hart. I really wouldn't pay any attention to that right now. These guys got plenty of recruiting in front of them, and there's plenty that will happen between now and the time that they probably announce their verbal commitment, whichever one decides to do it first. But just I trust the Clemson coaching staff, right? They've evaluated these guys. They thought that these two guys were worthy of that 2026 offer at the quarterback position. And we'll kind of just keep an eye on these guys and see, how their junior season goes as, high school players, and, see what kind of steps that Reynolds takes, and the same with Brady Hart. And I look forward to following these guys and watching their tape and kind of see how they develop, because again, like, yeah, we're talking about them committing to Clemson, but they still got 2 years of high school football so to
Yeah,
develop as players and quarterbacks. So that'll be exciting to watch that, and then figure out which one's going to lock it in and become that 2026 guy for the Tigers.
yeah. And I think the great thing is it's a good problem to have, to be like, okay, which one of them is going to
Right.
commit?
Yeah.
Because I do think Clemson ends up with one of them.
Yeah. No
I
doubt.
think they're in really great shape for in both of them, and so it's really on Clemson on how they want to navigate this, and so we'll see how that ultimately plays out.
Absolutely.
All right, I'm going to tee you up for our next topic. We did want to talk about more about the football team that we have coming back this year,
Yes, sir.
and obviously it's list season. Everybody knows what list season is. We're deep into June. People are getting anxious because the college football season is technically pretty close, but still feels a ways away. And so people get bored, and now we're making top 10 this and top 10 that. But sometimes we do want to hit on what the college football sphere, media sphere, is talking and saying about Clemson. And there was one particular article that kind of does just that on a particular position group for the Tigers.
Yeah, look, absolutely, man. I love talking about this because we're not talking about the other stuff, right? That the national media constantly wants to talk about with when it comes to Clemson football. But as you mentioned, man, we're in the height of list season. We're in the height of preview magazine season. Preseason poll this, top 10 that. Um, who's favored to win which conference, who's got the best position group coming back. And that's kind of where we settled on tonight. We want to talk about one of Clemson's strongest position groups coming back in the season of 2024. And Pro Football Focus ranked basically the linebacker units coming back for each individual college football team. And Clemson found themselves for the second year in a row being at that top spot for the linebacker position group. Obviously, that's a huge deal for the Clemson Tigers. Let's not forget, we just lost Jeremiah Trotter Jr. to the NFL draft, an amazing middle linebacker that was kind of the the centerpiece of our defense, the guy that got everybody lined up, the guy that made the call, the guy that made the reads, that made sure everybody had their specific spacing, all the D linemen were lined up in the gaps that they were supposed to. So that's a huge piece that we lose. And yet Clemson still finds himself atop college football when it comes to the linebacker position. Everybody knows we got Barrett Carter coming back. That dude is an absolute animal. I was so excited, as were all Clemson fans, right, hearing Barrett Carter's name, when he announced that he was coming back to Clemson and not going to the NFL draft. He was going to run it back one more year and see what he could do to help Clemson have a better football season. And it would be a much different picture if that guy went on to the NFL draft with Jeremiah Trotter. I can tell you that.
Oh yeah.
Can't wait to see. I mean, the guy is awesome in coverage. He's awesome in the run block. I think he ranks above 80% in both of those categories throughout last season. Just amazing. I mean, he had a really good season. Really good covering the flats. I mean, he's an athletic dude, a big guy. And then you got our buddy old Wade Woodass over there, or as Dabo likes to call him, Wade Whoopass over there.
Yeah.
And he's going to be obviously on the other side of that. Everybody knows what he can do. He's obviously, athletic piece. He's got big shoes to fill when it comes to filling the shoes of a Jeremiah Trotter Jr., but I think he's up for the task. You saw what he can do when we played Kentucky in that bowl game. He really was all over the field. He was in on seemingly every single tackle that Clemson had that game. Every time you looked up, Wade Woodaz was in on the tackle. Maybe not making a solo tackle, but he was in on everything, and the effort was relentless in that game, and that's always good to see. And then you got Kobe McLeod coming back, looking to take the next step in his progression as a Clemson linebacker. Really excited to see what he can do. And then not to mention the 5-star Sammy Brown coming into the fold, right? You land a big time 5-star recruit that everybody in the country wanted, but Clemson landed. Everybody knows the flowing locks coming out of his helmet, everything he did in high school at not only the linebacker position, but the running back position too. Just an absolute animal. We saw him in the spring game. And what did he do? First play in the spring game, sack.
Yeah.
Came right off the edge, blew past the offensive tackle, made him look like he was standing still, and absolutely murdered the quarterback if it wouldn't have been a whistle, two-hand touch type situation. So I think we should be extremely excited about our linebacker situation. I think it's going to anchor this defense, and we're really going to need it, right? As much as we talk about how good this defense is going to be, we feel really good about the defensive line, feel really good about the linebacker position. We feel good about the secondary as well, but there's still some young pieces that are going to be asked to do quite a lot in that secondary. And I think the benefit of having this linebacking core and all the previous starts and the previous snaps and all the experience coming back that you have there is going to pay huge dividends when it comes to the back end of this defense and kind of helping those safeties, helping those cornerbacks as we're trying to kind of put together a cohesive unit for the defense. So really excited about this linebacker room. Jordan, were you at all surprised seeing Clemson atop the linebacker position group when it came to the Pro Football Focus rankings?
I actually was at number one. I had no doubt that Clemson was going to be, in that top 10.
Yeah.
But to be honest with you, I was a little bit surprised to see them number one just because of the loss of Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Like that was, it's extremely productive, and the leader of that room, and one of the captains of that defense.
Right.
But I think that the article and kind of their list, I believe Max Chadwick was the one that made that list. He's showing a lot of respect to what Clemson has, as far as their depth is concerned. I mean, you hit on a couple guys. Of course, and of course bringing back Barrett Carter and Wade Woodaz is massive. Like I think one of the things that a lot of people don't like, everybody knows Barrett Carter. Like he's kind of a household name as far as linebackers are concerned. But Wade Woodaz has not gotten the same amount of hype coming into the year. He would start at a lot of different for a lot of different defenses in the country, and I think one of the things that makes especially this tandem of Barrett Carter and Wade Woodaz so great is just the versatility, man. Like they are extremely athletic, so they can cover, and that's one thing that has made
Yes.
I think has made Wes Goodwin's job a lot easier and made it a really easy at times last year. Is you have two guys who have linebacker size that are basically extra safeties. They can be
Yep.
extra safeties at times.
Yep.
And you can ask them to cover tight ends and in some cases wide receivers and feel okay about it. But they also have the downfield play ability and to make tackles. Wade Woodaz in particular. You mentioned what he did in the bowl game. I always think back to that. I believe it was like a jailbreak screen to Ray Davis where there was nobody. There was literally nobody in front, and Wade Woodaz completely just blows by his block and makes the tackle on one of the hardest players to tackle in the country to save what more than likely would have been a touchdown, and that was a massive swing in that game. Like he's a stud, man, in his own right, and he just hasn't gotten the same kind of recognition. So having these two guys, especially when you mentioned the youth that you have in the secondary, really talented secondary, but especially the young corners, Avion Terrell, Shelton Lewis. You bring back Jaden Lucas, who's actually one of the older guys in the room now, but he hasn't been able to stay healthy. And then of course the younger guys behind them. We talked about how much we love this group, but it makes it even easier when you have the support of Barrett Carter and Wade Woodaz and you can do a lot of different things with them in coverage to alleviate some of the pressure.
Right.
And of course they create they can create pressure and for sacks, tackles for loss. So when you have that, it's basically you're basically cheat. It's like a cheat code. So.
Look, and then,
I do love this group. So I was surprised they were number one, but I think that's PFF showing the respect to what Clemson has, behind them, and giving them a lot of credit for bringing back Barrett Carter and Wade Woodaz. So really excited about this group.
Yeah, can't be understated bringing those dudes back. And you talk about creating pressure and stuff. I mean, look, when you got guys that can fit the run and then cover like Barrett Carter and Wade Woodaz can, you can get you talk about as kind of a cheat code for Wes Goodwin, right? I mean, think about the combinations that you can create with that because they're really good in coverage. You can drop them in coverage and now you got a safety blitz, right? So it really causes confusion for the quarterback, causes confusion for the offense, and suddenly they're getting blown up and out of nowhere, right? Because you're so versatile in the things that you can do with your linebacking core and switching out safeties and getting creative with the pressures that you're bringing to keep that offense off balance. So it starts with guys like that and having the core of your defense be that versatile and a strength for you is definitely. I'm sure Wes Goodwin be the first to tell you that makes his job significantly easier. So let's pray for health. Let's hope
Yes.
for everybody getting out of fall camp healthy because I think this linebacker core, obviously, and this defense as a whole, has a chance to be special this year. Again, we got some young guys that are going to play some key roles this year, so there's obviously a chance of some bigger plays, some busts happening, because you are relying on some younger individuals at some key spots on that defense. But I still think it's going to be a pretty special year for the Clemson defense. I feel confident in that. We'll see about the offense.
Yeah, absolutely. And that will obviously be the difference maker on how Clemson season plays out. And I did want to hit on one guy we didn't even mention. Jamal Anderson, the guy that has almost like he's almost like another Barrett Carter, Isaiah Simmons.
Yeah.
Like he can, like as far as his athleticism. I mean, we saw what he was capable of in the bowl game. He's a guy that can really do a lot for you, and I'm really excited to see kind of how his role increases in 2024. You already mentioned Kobe McLeod. We'll see what he does, and he'll be taking on a bigger role. D. Creighton, like, and then of course Sammy Brown coming in as a 5-star. Man, he's going to play, but we'll see kind of how he fits into the rotation there. So you really do have a lot of options, and it's really exciting to have those two guys back in particular to kind of be the leaders and kind of spearhead the growth for a lot of the younger guys. And so this linebacker room, I mean, Wes Goodwin it's his position, it's his baby, kind of like it was with Brent Venables. So he's going to ask them to do a lot, and you got to have really, really smart. First of all, really smart football players to play that position. And in the modern day of college football, with how difficult it is to stop these high powered offenses, you got to have linebackers that can cover. If you don't, it makes things a lot more difficult. So I do really like the makeup of this room, and I shout out to PFF. I'll take it. I wasn't expecting number one, but I am not mad at it.
best linebacker room in the country. I'm sure there's a ton of different ways that you can argue that, and I'm sure the fan bases in the top 10 would have plenty to say about Clemson being up there at the number one spot. But at the end of the day, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It doesn't matter. It's an elite group of linebackers that we have returning, and there's no doubt about that. So, argue for best in the country or whatever the case may be. I think it's definitely top 5 in the country, no doubt about that. And shout out to Pro Football Focus for giving Clemson the nod and giving the respect to one Barrett Carter and then Wade Woodaz as well for being those veteran guys returning and really anchoring that room.
Absolutely. And we'll kind of see how it all comes together. I mean, the exciting thing is that and also the not, I don't want to say scary, but it's kind of you're anticipating it. Is that they're not going to have anywhere to hide week 1, so we're going to kind of get to see these guys in their in full action, and we're gonna see what this group is actually made of when they play that Georgia offense. Because
not to mention that
really
Clemson will be going against the number 3 linebacker group in the country according to Pro Football Focus. So
that's very true.
Georgia checked in at number 3 on that list. So it goes both ways in week 1. Like we've stated before, that game's you're gonna figure out exactly where Clemson is, how much progress has been made specifically on the offensive side of the ball. But the defense, make no mistake, that defense is going to get tested in a big way in week 1 as well. So it's a measuring stick all the way around for Clemson to find out where they are and how much further they got to go to climb back up to where they were once upon a time.
Absolutely. All right. I think that's going to conclude our the plan, sort of our the topics we wanted to hit on for in that kind of portion of the show. Of course, we're going to kick it over to you guys for the comment section. And if you guys have any sort of questions, takes, concerns, anything,
absolutely,
feel free to start putting them in. And of course, if you want to guarantee that your question is read, then the super chat feature is available. So feel free to do that if you so please. And of course, hit the like button if you haven't already. We're going to remind you every single time. So if you haven't already, it really does, help us and help the channel. So, and it's obviously it's free. So we're not asking you to do too much.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Just it's free, man. Hit that like button for us. Hit that subscribe button for us. Help us out. I don't think we've hit 5,000 subscribers yet. I didn't check today, but we're pretty close. So help us get there. Shout out to Mark Rogers. Shout out to the rest of the college football, the Voice of College Football family. Go check out the rest of the channels, the Michigan channel, the Notre Dame channel, the SEC channel. There's a ton of channels out there. I'm sure you guys will find something that interests you over there. Um, but make sure you support the channel. Amazon links in the description of this video. So anytime you're shopping on Amazon, if you just copy and paste that, that helps out the Voice of College Football as well. And we appreciate that. Hey, before we move on to the comments, you guys go ahead and get your comments in. Look forward to your questions and things that you guys want to talk about. But shout out to our boy Trevor Lawrence.
oh
Signed
yeah,
his big deal with the Jacksonville Jaguars. $275 million contract, 5-year contract, $55 million a year. He is now tied with Joe Burrow for the highest paid NFL player in history. So shout out to Trevor Lawrence. Wish nothing but the best for that guy. Um, can't wait to see how his NFL career continues to progress. Hopefully, he can get him a Super Bowl or two before he hangs it up and make all us Clemson Tiger fans proud.
yeah, absolutely, man. It was cool to see that news because obviously we love to see our our any Clemson players have a lot of success in the NFL, and uh, nobody's more deserving really than than Trevor Lawrence. Just what
Amen.
he meant to this program, and obviously coming, uh, his the start of his career obviously wasn't the best for a lot of reasons. Particularly the coach he had and all that, and it was kind of like, okay, well, what's going to happen now? And we there was all this excitement and buildup, and then they hired Doug Peterson. The first season they go to the playoff, they win a playoff game. Trevor Lawrence, they come back, they had that huge comeback against the Chargers. Um, and so you're starting to see kind of the what was promised about him as far as the generational talent.
Yeah,
It's starting to come together. Last season didn't go as well as they hoped, but obviously Trevor was injured, and there were a lot of things wrong with that offense. Um, it, I I hate I hate doing this because I'm a Titans fan, and so it's always kind of weird talking about Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars, and giving them praise because I'm just not used to doing that. But it's hard to I can't root against him. It's hard to. Um, and I'm just happy for Trevor. It's just really cool, and another reason why, um, you know, just another example of Clemson players, having a ton of success in the NFL, and now he's the highest paid quarterback, highest paid player in the league right now, second to
absolutely.
well, I'm sorry, actually tied with Joe Burrow. Um,
$141 million at signing, Jordan.
that's crazy, man. That's insane.
We ain't ever gonna see that kind of money in our lifetime. But shout out to Trevor Lawrence for getting it, man. Super proud of him.
Absolutely. He got paid.
He got paid.
We love to see it.
Well, well deserved, man. Well deserved.
That's gonna be interesting. They play him and Deshaun are gonna play. I think week 2.
Oh,
I don't,
really?
I don't think we've seen that matchup yet. Actually,
Where do they play at? Is that in
I believe
Jacksonville?
in Jacksonville. I want to
Man,
say
I would love to go to that game.
that'd be really
Not like that'd be a cool game just to go to.
yeah. 2 of the best to ever do it on the
Yeah,
same
man.
football field. It's kind of crazy because Trevor Lawrence has now been in the league 3 seasons, but we've never gotten that matchup.
Oh
But
yeah, they've never played
when
each
you
other.
think of but when you think about what happened with Deshaun and kind of
Yeah.
all that stuff, he wasn't on the field for a lot.
Yeah, I mean, this is. I mean, you think about it. I mean, we obviously it's not an NFL channel, but this big year for Deshaun, man, to kind of
Oh
see
yeah,
if he can shake back to the player that he was before. All the off the field stuff happened, and that whole situation that went on and took years to kind of all culminate and get figured out, and the punishment handed down and the suspension and the money and the payouts and all that stuff. So I think this is kind of a turning point for him. Like, either he's gonna get back closer to the player that he was prior to, that made him such a big commodity, or it's just kind of, maybe not ever going to be the same again.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I did see a clip. I saw some clips of the Browns practices of him hitting, of him making some really nice throws.
Yeah.
And yeah, honestly, the offense, as far as his, the skill talent he has to work with, is pretty good this year, I think. So we'll kind of see how that goes. And same thing for Trevor, because this is a big year for him, because last season didn't go the way everybody expected, and so he just got that big payday. Like, that's great, but you got to also
he's got work to do.
Yeah, you also have to actually show it on the field, like, or it's
Right.
there are ways to get out of those contracts, and and kind of he's got to make sure that the Jaguars get the return on their investment. I guess is the best way.
100%, 100%. And he will. He's that guy. He's gonna put in the work. He's definitely gonna be a driven guy. He wants to be, he wants to be a Hall of Famer one day, no doubt about it. And obviously he wants to win the biggest game, which is the Super Bowl. So he'll keep working. He'll be just fine. I know I saw some criticism out there on the internet today, like, he hasn't earned that. He didn't do, like, blah blah blah. I was like, whatever, man. Okay, well, I think he earned
it. I knew what the reaction was going to be because of how last season went, and
right.
So it didn't surprise me. Like, there were people that were like, "Oh, he's like, why is he getting that kind of money?" But I think it's the Jaguars making a commitment. From internally, they still believe in what they have in Trevor Lawrence, and and I get that that's really all that matters.
Absolutely,
and he's worth that money to them. So
he'll reward them. He'll reward them. I guarantee you, he'll reward them for it.
All right. Let's actually let's hit let's kind of see what you guys are talking about in the comment section. Jay asks, of the big contenders, Miami, North Carolina, NC State, Florida State, Clemson, and maybe Louisville, who has the easiest, hardest path to Charlotte? Oh, okay. Of those teams you mentioned, the easiest path to Charlotte, I don't have their schedules memorized, but I'm going to start with the easiest. I'm going to go with Miami. When you look at their schedule, it's pretty manageable, especially when you consider what they have added and what they expect to be this year out of the transfer portal. Like, I think they have a pretty easy path. They only have to play Florida State in conference. They do have the non-conference game with Florida, but obviously that doesn't affect the ACC standings. They don't really. When you look at Miami's schedule, and I want to pull it up, but it's not very daunting, and I think that there's a lot that sets up well for them as far as, like, where these games fall on the schedule. I mean, they start with Virginia Tech, they travel to Cal, they play at Louisville, they get Florida State at home, they get Duke at home, they play at Georgia Tech, they get Wake Forest at home, and then they travel to Syracuse. Like, Virginia Tech could be, obviously they bring back a ton. That could be interesting. I don't expect Cal to be very good. Louisville, I expect to take a step back. I would think that Miami, I would favor Miami right now. You get your toughest game at home. Duke, I don't expect to be very good this year, and you get them at home. Playing at Georgia Tech, we'll see. They have a lot coming back offensively, but defensively, they were terrible last year, and I have no reason to think they'll be much better this year on the defensive side of the ball. Wake Forest, I don't expect to be any good this year, unfortunately. And Syracuse is interesting. They've gotten a lot of hype, but I would still favor mine. Like, I think that's a pretty manageable ACC schedule. And then the hardest, I would say it's Clemson, actually. They do get. I mean, you do play. You have to travel to Florida State. You have to play Louisville. You have to play NC State. I think Clemson plays the most out of these five teams that you listed. I think they have the most of the other teams on their schedule.
Yeah, I mean they play everybody except Miami when it comes to the top contenders, right?
Yep.
They play Virginia Tech, they play Louisville, they play FSU, they play NC State. So, they check all the boxes for the preseason top contenders to play for the ACC championship game outside of Miami. Miami's the only of the top contenders in the ACC that Clemson doesn't play this year. Now, granted, we get NC State at home, but you travel on the road to FSU. There's going to be extra juice in that game with the DJ Uiagalelei situation. Everybody knows how that's going to go, right? There's going to be a ton of media coverage. We're going to hear about, the revenge factor. And I'm sure FSU, I mean, say what you want about FSU, but that environment's going to be absolutely insane. They're going to be juiced up just because of that added factor. It's going to be super loud. And then you get to see what Louisville does in year two. Obviously, they had a favorable schedule. So, we'll see if they can kind of, what kind of difficulty level that'll be. Right now, obviously, they're a contender in the ACC, but, to be determined. They did a lot in the transfer portal, so we'll see how it works out for them.
Yeah. Louisville is, like, when you look at their schedule, it's a little, it's not too, I mean, okay, so they play, as far as conference games, they get Georgia Tech at home. They they do travel to Notre Dame. That's not going to matter for the ACC standings, but they get SMU at home. They travel to Virginia. They get Miami at home. They travel to BC. They have to play at Clemson. They play at Stanford. They get Pittsburgh and then they get Pitt at home. I think I don't think their schedule is as easy as last year's was.
But it's not bad. All their toughest games are at home, minus the Clemson game.
Yep.
Like their toughest opponents all come to Louisville outside of Clemson. So, I mean that sets up at least pretty well for Louisville when it comes to, just kind of how the games fell for them.
Yeah, I'll still probably lean Miami because NC State's is fairly manageable too. But I think Miami, as far as their schedule compared to what I think about them and like how good I think they'll be, I think they have I would lean towards them having the easiest conference schedule. But it's I think it's very clear. I think it's more clear on who has the hardest, and I actually think it's Clemson. And so when we talked about that, so that was a good question. It'd be really, really interesting how that race kind of plays out.
Yeah, man, it's good. Let's just hope it plays out better for the Tigers than it did a year ago.
John Sarin asked, did you see quotes from Dexter Carter, the number 2 wide receiver, I believe in the 2026 class? Keywords to me, he sees coaches as all in on sticking with kids and developing them no matter what. I mean, yeah, it's that's the message that this staff and Dabo have been, consistently trying to convey to these kids, is that, we want to bring you in and commit to you and your development as a football player. And we're willing to work with you, and even if we're not one of those programs that's going to cast you aside just because you aren't on the schedule we thought you would be when you got here. And we're going to continue to invest time in you as long as you do your part. We're going to commit to you as well. And so I do think that's kind of the message that they're trying to send, and that they've sent with this 25 class, and they're continuing to send as they lay the groundwork for this 26 class and beyond. That's always going to be the philosophy, for
Yeah,
Clemson, and as long as Dabo is the head coach, that's going to be the kind of the message that they're going to send. And I think it's not going to attract everybody, but I do think that in this current NIL and the transfer portal landscape, you know, that it does resonate with certain kids. So I think that's kind of their goal, and you're going to attract the kids that you think fit your culture, when you do,
mhm.
with that particular message. So
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's been the message, of the Clemson program under Dabo Swinney pretty much the entire time, and it's going to continue to be the message that they tell recruits and the way that they go about high school recruiting. That's kind of their MO, right? They're going to pick their guys, they're going to bring them in, they're going to develop them over, a 3 to 4 year career, and they're not out there. A lot of fans hate it. We disagree with it to certain aspects of it with the transfer portal and not bringing in certain guys. But again, the pitch of we're going to bring you in and develop you still resonates with a certain group of recruits out there. It doesn't resonate with everybody, but it's going to resonate with the ones that are a culture fit for what Dabo Swinney wants to do and what the Clemson program's built around. So, and Dexter Carter, maybe he's one of those guys where you know, that's what he's really looking for, and that kind of resonates with him more than maybe some other things that he's seen at other programs. And if that's the case, then those are the type of guys that Clemson's looking for, and those are the guys that Clemson will land and continue to land.
sorry, my mic was muted. I see you guys are in the chat talking about some realignment. If you haven't already, Mark Rogers and a great friend of the Voice of College Football community, TJ Altimore, uh, he they had a show last night, discussing
Yeah,
conference realignment. I'm sure if you guys have notifications on for the channel, it was streamed on the Clemson channel, I believe on the Florida State channel, and some of the other team channels as well. It's just kind of outlining sort of kind of the dynamics of realignment as far as Florida State and Clemson and Miami and North Carolina in particular were concerned. And there was a lot of really, really good stuff. So if when we conclude this show, if you are interested in hearing that, be sure to check that out. I wanted to be on there, but we were both invited to be on there, but the schedule didn't really work out. So
yeah,
um,
yeah. I really wanted to make it to that. I was excited to try to make it, and you know, just got a little too late and couldn't make it to that show. But you guys definitely go check it out. Great show that those guys did. Just kind of, you know, this this is the college football we live in now. It's a
yep,
crazy world. It's a crazy world.
absolutely. So yeah, be sure to check that out. I listened to it today while I was working. A lot of interesting tidbits and just some different perspective, like some new perspectives that I had never really thought about as far as the dynamics of how all of this plays out from a not just a athletic standpoint, but from a university as a whole standpoint. And so, a lot of really, really interesting stuff um, there. Let's see, what else are you guys talking about? Tiger Tom asks, is Cristobal's contract the longest in college in college football. Obviously, it isn't the largest. I mean, I don't know of any. They don't. Miami is a private school, so they don't release those numbers publicly. But I do remember it was. I do remember it was reported. Was it like 11 years? How long was it? Did you? I can't remember. But I do know it was like extreme, like I think like a decade or something like that. So I mean, yeah, as far as publicly known contracts, yeah, I would assume that is the longest. That's just, but private school, you never know with private schools, and Miami's not the only one that doesn't report their exact numbers. USC is the same,
Right.
So
Benefits of being a private school and not having to disclose that information.
absolutely. SEC dog has he makes an observation about the Big Ten. He says Oregon going to win the Big Ten year one, in my opinion. We'll see who else is any good there besides OSU and Michigan. I mean, let's talk real talk. I mean, I think that's a really good question. With Oregon and Washington coming into the conference,
Yeah.
I definitely think Oregon is in a really good spot. As far as they return a lot, and they're in a really good position. They had a really strong year last year. Michigan, they lost a ton. We don't really know what they're going to be. They lost their head coach, and they're having they have a new starter at quarterback. I definitely think Oregon is this year one of the top contenders, like one of the three or four. Of course, Ohio State is they continue to chug along. I know they are trying to get that Michigan monkey off their back and kind of reclaim their hold on the Big Ten. We'll see. Michigan is really interesting because
I mean,
I don't know how to feel about them because defensively I think they're still really really good, but
right.
They have a lot of new pieces on the offensive side of the ball.
I mean, when you think about the Big Ten, man, it's like that's going to be a really intriguing conference to keep up with this season, right? Like, I mean, you talk about the addition of Oregon, you talk about the
And I didn't even
addition
mention
of
USC and UCLA. So yeah,
USC, UCLA, Washington. I mean, it would not surprise me, SEC dog, if Oregon went on to win year one in the Big Ten. That would not surprise me. Oregon, quite frankly, is built to compete and win in the Big Ten. They are built
absolutely.
very well. They're massive along the lines of scrimmage. This is not your typical run of the mill West Coast style team, right? And by I mean no disrespect to West Coast teams, but typically you know for almost what seems like forever in college football, West Coast kind of had these teams that obviously weren't as physical in the trenches, but they had, kind of these flashy offenses and, they could really put up points and stuff like that. That's not at all how a team like Oregon is built. So I would not be surprised to see them year one have a ton of success and maybe even pull it out. I mean, you talked about Michigan, Jordan, and the thing that strikes me with Michigan is you have to, I guess, assume that they're going to take somewhat of a step back. It's just how big of a step back is it going to be? You mentioned their defense. Their defense is probably going to still be really good, right? But how much of a step back does that offense take with all of the production that you lost off of that team? All that veteran leadership that you lost. You lost Jim Harbaugh. I know they hired from within, and that dude coached dang near half the season for Michigan because Jim Harbaugh kept getting suspended for, one reason or the next. We won't get into that or rehash that stuff. But you would have to think like just with the coaching turnover, with all the veteran leadership that went out the door and has moved on to the NFL, you would have to think that Michigan takes somewhat of a step back. You've seen what Ohio State has done this offseason. They trying to literally pay for anybody to get that roster to where they can beat Michigan and be atop the Big Ten again. So obviously, when you think about the Big Ten, Ohio State's kind of that program at the top, but I think Oregon's right there with them. Right? If I had to pick the Big Ten, I think it's between those two teams. I'm out on a Penn State until they prove otherwise. I'm so
Yeah,
sick of
I understand.
going in and everybody hypes up Penn State and they're going to be good and this, that, and the other, and they lose to
The only two good teams on their schedule every year.
the only two good teams they got on their schedule every year. I'm just tired of it. I'm not saying they're a bad program, and I'm not saying like Franklin's a bad coach. I'm just saying I'm out on them being a contender in the Big Ten until they prove me wrong. That's just how I feel about that. You think about USC. I don't know that their defense is going to be that much improved that they can withstand the competition that they're going to be playing in the Big Ten, right? Like
Yeah,
I don't think they're going to be there. That's just my personal opinion. UCLA, no. Washington, no. They're going to take a gigantic step back. They lost pretty much everything.
yeah,
They're starting from scratch, from square one. So I would say with the Big Ten, it's definitely between Ohio State and Oregon, and it wouldn't surprise me if Oregon came out on top in year one.
yeah. I thought it's a good question. It's fun to talk about, other, the other aspects of college football. So that was a really good question. And yeah, the Big Ten race it's going to be interesting. And Oregon plays both Ohio State and Michigan, so we'll know a lot about them, and whether they're truly a contender. But yeah, I like the way they're built right now, and I like what Dan Lanning has. I like the culture Dan Lanning has instilled there. They are not. They're not the Oregon that's kind of soft defensively, and they're high powered offenses that we got to know when Chip Kelly was there, and
Right.
like I think they're built more like they're building themselves to be more of a championship caliber roster. So
Absolutely. Definitely much more physical than your Oregon teams of the past used to
yeah.
be.
I should have started these, but I forgot to do that during the show. Gordon mentions that NC State is a hot brand right now. Top 25 football, Final Four for men and women, College World Series. Yeah, they've had a really good year, athletic year, no doubt.
Yeah.
A really, really good athletic year. I don't like giving them credit, but you have to. They had a solid year in football. Obviously, I think they're the only program to make both men's and no, I think them and UConn did men's and women's Final Four, and then they didn't even start the college baseball season that well, and then they got hot towards the end of the year. They beat basically every top team in the ACC in their weekend series, and then of course they're now in Omaha. Like, yeah, they've done the thing. Now, none of those have resulted in a championship. We'll see kind of what happens with baseball, but yeah, I got to give them credit. I guess been a really good year. I mean, Clemson has had a really good year in that aspect. Not to that degree, but
No, definitely not to that degree. Always hard to give NC State credit.
Yeah.
Especially in the where I live, surrounded by
Yeah.
NC State's fans. It seems like, but yeah, no, they've had a really great year. But they got to come to the Valley this season, and we're gonna have something special for them this season. We have to avenge that loss. I hate losing to NC State, especially as long as their head coach is Dave Doran.
Yeah.
I can't stand that guy.
I can't do another loss today. That's the second in 3 years. Like I've kind of had enough.
Yeah.
um,
We can't keep doing this.
yeah,
They especially can't come to the Valley and win.
no, please God,
No.
yeah. I was
Please.
at the game. I was at the 2022 game when they came. It was that top 10 matchup. That was one of the more satisfying wins that I've been to in person.
Yeah.
It just felt good to get that payback. That was a fun night. Jay says, saw some more inaccurate info in the wide receiver room today. Apparently, we lost our best receiver and won't be able to replace him this year. Yeah, that's kind of the reality of when you, especially this time of year, and it's very obvious when people don't know what they're talking about. Like when you read some of these kind of pieces on Clemson and what they look like offensively, and this is no disrespect to they're more than likely talking about Bo Collins. I don't. Bo Collins was not your best wide receiver last year, so
Nope.
I just and
No, he was
I
not.
think he's in. I think him transferring to Notre Dame. I think that was a good move for him. I would have. It would have been nice to have Bo back. He's played a lot of football. He's experienced, but was not your best receiver, and there were a couple other guys on the team that gave you a little bit more juice from the wide receiver position when healthy. So, but I do hate that it didn't really work out with it never really came fully together for Bo, because I thought the potential was there for sure. Um, you saw what he did as a true freshman in a really difficult year for Clemson offensively, and he made a lot of plays. But sophomore year couldn't really stay on the field, and then last season a little bit more of the same, just the inconsistency, struggling with drops at times. Like it never fully came together for him. So it was kind of just one of those things. Like, well, a change of scenery might be what's best.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's just the national media narrative when it goes around Clemson, right? Nobody can name a Clemson receiver. They lost their best receiver to Notre Dame via the transfer portal. Dabo doesn't do the transfer portal, so nobody knows anything about Clemson wide receivers anymore. But it's just not the case. We've outlined it, I think, at length on this channel, Jordan, when it comes to the wide receiver core and how we feel about it and the pieces that we have coming back. And maybe that's true that nobody in the national media knows anybody's name. They should at least know
Yeah,
Antonio Williams' name. They should at least know Tyler Brown's name. They should, know a couple of these guys' names that kind of played pivotal roles last season. But I think by the end of the season, there'll be a lot different feelings about our wide receiver core. At least I hope so. Because if not, that means our offense did not take a step forward. We have
right.
a very deep wide receiver room, and there should be no reason that our passing game doesn't look vastly different than it did last season.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's easy if you're not tuned into the program, it's easy once you hear a narrative repeated over and over again. Clemson doesn't have receivers. Clemson doesn't have receivers. Clemson doesn't have receivers. Like that's just you're just going to regurgitate that opinion whether it's true or not. And so that's kind of been one of the things that from a perception standpoint that Clemson is just going to have to deal with and battle and prove wrong this year, because Clemson is not lacking in the receiver room. Not this year. In past seasons, especially 2021. Yeah, I got you. 2022. Yeah, I got you to a degree. But last season, I don't think the receivers were the reason why the offense wasn't successful. And this year, with everything you have coming back and what you've added, this group is is in really, really good shape, and then there's a lot of potential there.
Yeah, absolutely. Ton of potential, but we'll see how it plays out on the field this year.
All right. Tiggs asks, has anyone studied up on how many transfer players stay at the school they transferred to for more than 2 years? That'd be an interesting kind of deep dive. I would imagine no, because I do think the players tend to transfer later. Even nowadays with the one time transfer rule, players still tend to the bulk of transfers are older like upperclassmen. Um, and so I wouldn't imagine that they stay for longer than 2 years, but it depends because you do have true freshmen that come in and and maybe in a lot of cases they haven't even gone through a full season. They go through spring practice and they're in the portal already. So, but yeah, I'd be really interested to see something like if any research were to come out. That would take a lot of time because there's literally thousands of players in the portal each cycle. So it would be a very difficult thing to track. But yeah, I'd like to see some numbers on that.
Yeah, I'd definitely be interested in seeing numbers on that, but that seems like it would be very time consuming and difficult to put together.
Yeah. Jackson asks, he says it feels weird that Clemson Stanford is a conference game. Yeah, man, you and me both. I really don't know how to feel about it. Stanford coming to the Valley, like that's going to be something, for sure. It is what it is. That's what college football is in 2024.
I'm just glad we don't have to go to Stanford. Like, I mean,
Yeah, I'm glad we're not the ones traveling there.
as weird
Yeah,
as it is, I'm glad they're the one traveling all the way across the country and not us.
yeah. Absolutely, yeah. But that's where we are. There are teams traveling to Cal this year, traveling to SMU. That's what the ACC is, the All Coast Conference. All right. Talking about Tyler Brown. Yeah, really excited. I'm really excited about Tyler Brown in year two. John, hits on Adam Randall, who is, I think he's the biggest wild card in this entire room because if he, breaks out, then all bets are off on what this team is capable of. Because then you have a true outside threat, and with his combination of size and speed, like that's and he's making catches and he's confident. I think that's one of the things that he struggled with last year was just kind of getting his feet back under him and getting the confidence to really attack every single route and kind of have that motor that Dabo has talked about in the past regarding him. It's like the motor wasn't always running at 100%, but when he is, he's he's one of the best players on the team. So if we can get that version of Adam Randall, I think you saw glimpses of that in the bowl game. Like, then yeah, this offense is going to be really. It takes a lot of pressure off of the true freshmen who are definitely more bound. They can play anywhere, but they're obviously boundary type receivers as well, and it opens a lot of things up for the other guys, the Antonio Williams and the Tyler Browns, the Troy Stellatos, the Cole Turners. It just everything kind of you have a really complete and dynamic wide receiver room if Adam Randall can be that consistent outside threat for you. So I'm obviously it's a kind of a believe it when I see it at this point because it's been we were kind of waiting on it last year and it just never fully happened. But man, I'm not selling my Adam Randall stock by any means. Um, and so I'm really excited about what he can be, with a full off season of health and of a full vote of confidence from the staff. That I think that he has the potential to have a breakout year.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's his spot to either take grasp of and run with, or it's his spot to lose, right? And he's a guy that could absolutely change the perception and the production of this offense this coming season. He's got all the physical ability. We just got to see it on the field, like you said, man. But like you, I'm not selling stock in Adam Randall. I'm not saying he's going to break out and be a, 800,000-yard receiver this year either.
Right.
But I think he's capable of being that go-to big-time possession guy for Clemson. We just haven't seen it yet. And, maybe we see it this season. I certainly hope we do, because if we're getting that kind of production out of him, the rest of the guys are going to be able to eat as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there were opportunities like you saw, like it wasn't like Adam Randall wasn't, getting open. Like there were countless times where he was, where he got open, and sometimes a lot of times it wasn't even on him, but it just the reality is it wasn't always there, and I think that's a part of what Dabo was talking about with just getting him to fully uh, attack every single rep with the same intensity. All right. I saw a question about I think it was from John. I think he asked about Cortez Mills. Yeah, there it is. He asked, "How excited are you about Cortez Mills? Sounds like he'll soon be a Tiger." Um, I I do think Clemson is in really really good shape with him right now. Um, I'm not ready to just to kind of conclude that he'll be a Tiger. There are a lot of signs pointing that way, but because of the schools that are involved in his recruitment, particularly one school in particular that's involved in his recruitment, I'm always very hesitant when they're involved to kind of write the books. Um, of course, if you don't know who we're talking about, Cortez Mills from Homestead, Florida, top 100 receiver, really, really dynamic talent. Showed out at the OT7 camp. He was only there one day, but that one day he was there he was really electric. He made like a really impressive one-handed snag in the end zone, like with like two defenders on him. Yeah, he would be a fantastic addition. And kind of put a bow on the receivers for this 25 class. There are a lot of things that are pointing Clemson's direction. I'll say as far as his recruitment goes. He came on the official visit weekend and had Clemson did about as well as you could have asked, and he was very very glowing about Clemson in his after his visit and in subsequent appearances um, at different camps. Well, at the OT7 camp, and he even named Clemson as his leader. But he was at Florida this past weekend. He still, he maintained that Clemson was his leader. But the team I'm really, really wary of is Miami, who he visits at the end of the month. He's looking to make his decision in July. And as far as I can tell, he still plans to take that Miami official visit. So I'm not ready to conclude that he'll be a Tiger, knowing what what we all know about how Miami operates in the recruiting landscape right now, with just the sort of stick they swing as far as NIL is concerned. So I think Clemson is in the driver's seat, but I think anything can change once he goes on that official visit. There's a lot of people in his camp that want him at Clemson, but Miami has also kind of slow played him a little bit, going after a couple of other, guys on their board and Vernell Brown and Jamie French. So, you know, if Miami doesn't land, either of them or none of them, then, if they decide to swing back around, and you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean,
So
look, there's a lot of reasons to feel really good about where Clemson is with Cortez Mills, but like you said, in the world of college football we live in, which is essentially pay for play, and the amount of money that a school like Miami can bring in and can offer, and all of those things, it's never over, right? You never feel 100%. Even when these guys do verbal commits, I mean, Clemson doesn't typically, once somebody verbally commits to Clemson, um, obviously Clemson's got the rule where you got to shut it down. You can't go on any other visits. Um, but in this new landscape of college football where it's pay for play, nothing's set in stone anymore. Anything can happen. It always could, but it just feels like more of a possibility in the current landscape of college football.
yeah, absolutely. So I'm just that's one of the reasons where I'm like, I'm not ready to conclude. It's great where Clemson is, and there's crystal balls in for him to end up at Clemson. But if he doesn't cancel that Miami visit, I'm very I'm on pins and needles the whole time. We'll see how it goes. But like I said, there's a lot of things in Clemson's favor as far as how the recruitment has played out. They've made it known that he's a priority. He's got a lot of family, like the family in his circle, the people in his circle really, really like Clemson, and there's a lot of them want him at Clemson and want him to leave the state. But when NIL enters the discussion, depends on the kid. This isn't a universal thing, but when NIL enters the discussion, sometimes things change. And, like I said, Miami, I'm sure that Miami slow playing him has not helped their, their standing with him. But NIL is obviously the can be the great equalizer in some of these recruitments. So we'll see. All right, let's do a couple more, and we'll get on out of here. K Klubnik enthusiast says, "I'm not really trying to buy into big hype. I was certain last offseason we would go all the way, then Duke have it. Yeah, I mean there was a lot of reasons to be excited last season with the addition of Garrett Riley. You saw what K Klubnik was able to do in limited action, and showed a lot of promise. The stuff you were hearing about the wide receivers in the offseason was very encouraging, and things changed, and health and all that certainly played a factor. He brought back Will Shipley and Phil Maffa. Um, the offensive line, frankly, should have been better than it was last year, and it wasn't. Um, you were really excited about what the potential of what you had defensively, and that ended up panning out for the most part. But obviously the hopes and dreams were scattered pretty quickly. So I understand the hesitancy to buy into hype, and that's why we're kind of we'll hype up certain aspects of this team, but at the end of the day, you don't really know. And even with the changes, the staff changes that Clemson has made, and the improvements at different position groups that have been made, you don't really know. And I understand after 3 years of Clemson not playing up to the standard that they had come to expect of themselves. You gotta have a healthy dose of skepticism, even when things do seem to be looking on the up. So I understand. It's
Yeah,
we'll find
100%.
out real
Look,
soon.
it remains to be seen, right? Believe it when you see it. It's a wait and see approach with this team, and more specifically the offensive side of the ball. We can sit on here and recognize the improvements that have been made. A Matt Luke, a Chris Rumpf, uh, um, a Garrett Riley coming on board, um, the addition of T.J. Moore and Brian Wesco, and Antonio Williams coming back, being fully healthy. A fully healthy Adam Randall, a year removed from his latest surgery. Right, we can recognize all these things and this potential growth, but it's still while those are reasons to be optimistic, you have to have a great amount of caution with it, because just like you mentioned, we went in the last season thinking that this offense was going to look completely different, and it didn't. Um, and Garrett Riley was asked about that during the season, and he pointed to you know personnel not being able to execute the stuff that he really wanted to execute, and he had to make some adjustments mid-season and kind of go back to some of the stuff that Clemson was doing before he got there, just to kind of limp along and get through the season, right? So we'll see what year two looks like. But I think at best you can just be cautiously optimistic about this offense.
Absolutely. All right, last one. Tiggs talking about Darius Gray out of Virginia, um, class of 2026 offensive lineman, was at camp at the Dabo Sweeney camp last week, and was one of the first offers that went out. Yeah, I think I think Clemson did a really good job of getting in the door early. Matt Luke had a really great impression on him, and he's definitely going to be one of the priorities of that 26 class. Um, you're going to have stiff competition. He's a top 100 kid and one of the best, one of the best interior offensive linemen in the class. I know Alabama is offered, and a lot of other big time schools. So you're going to be in a battle, but Clemson has done especially considering what Clemson has done in the state of Virginia this past cycle, and kind of what Matt Luke the returns that Matt Luke we've seen from Matt Luke early on, and the kind of the seeds that he's laying for this 2026 class. There's a lot of reason to be excited about what Clemson can do at that position in particular the next cycle. So with that being said, I think that's going to wrap up our show tonight. Once again, thank you guys for tuning in. We still got 29 listening. Those of you that are on the rewatch, of course, we always have timestamps in the description if you want to go back and listen to something that we hit on. Obviously, there was only really 2 segments today, and then it was listener questions, so it won't be a long one. But we greatly appreciate each and every one of you, however you choose to watch, and those of you that support the show. And we're going to have a lot to discuss as we get further and deeper into June as recruiting starts to really take off, and we'll see the returns of the official visit weekend and who ends up in the class and all that. So we'll be there to discuss it with you. I think you still there, TPC?
Yeah, yep, I'm still here.
Okay, just making sure you weren't
Appreciate all.
home or.
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm still on the way, but appreciate all you guys stopping in tonight, hanging out with us, getting into the comment section. Make sure if you haven't already, hit that like button on your way out. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for us. Share our videos with the rest of your college football community and friends. We'd love to have them a part of the channel. Again, there will be some changes on the time and possibly the day that we're doing this show. We're going to try to figure out something that works a little bit better than what we got right now. So make sure you guys are monitoring the community page. Once we make that decision, that's where we'll put it out. So this time will probably change before next week's show. So be on the lookout for the community tab, and we'll get you guys that information just as soon as we have it.
Yeah, absolutely. So stay tuned for that. But until then, I'm Jordan Bowman. He's Tiger Paw Craven. And we will see you guys next week. And go Tigers.
Good night, everybody. Go Tigers.